In my last video, I made the case that you should prioritize having fun in jiu-jitsu versus placing yourself under unrealistic expectations of performance. What you don't want to do is leave the academy feeling bad about your game because you're keeping score. Oh, he tapped me again tonight and so did he, and I never do well against him. And then you don't feel very good about your game, and next thing you know, you end up quitting. What you want to do is just go there to have fun and turn it into a lifestyle, and everything else just takes care of itself. Well, I got a little pushback from some people that said, that's great, this idea of having fun, but where do the intangibles come into play? Tenacity, resilience, having a no-quit attitude, being able to bring yourself to a higher level of aggression when you need to and keep pushing, because after all, jiu-jitsu is a fighting art and you might have to use it in self-defense. So shouldn't we be training the intangibles as well and not just keeping it playful? Well, let's talk about it. As always, I'm Rick Ellis, and I'm a little late getting this video out. I try to do at least one video per week on this channel, and I just got way too busy last week working on all the details for Old Grappler Summit, which is our over 40 jiu-jitsu event down here in San Diego this October. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of moving parts to pulling something like this off, and so I had a lot of work to do last week with that, and it's going great. We're getting lots of signups, and it's looking like it's going to be just an amazing event. So if you think you might want to join us, there's still space. Check it out at oldgrapplersummit.com. And also, if you're in the Chicago area, I'm going to be teaching a seminar next month. And for details on that, you can just go to my personal website, rickellis.com. Okay, so you want to keep it playful and have fun in jiu-jitsu, but where does the development of the intangibles come into play? I think it's really important to separate skill development from the development of the intangibles. The intangibles being resilience, your ability to keep pushing when you're tired, your determination, your discipline to keep showing up to train, all those things, the mental game of jiu-jitsu. I think that these are two separate things. Your skill development is one thing, the intangibles are another thing. And it's my conviction that skill development happens most effectively when the pace is a little bit more mellow. And here's a thought experiment to illustrate that. Let's say you had a magic power, and that power was that when you walk into a jiu-jitsu school, everybody is operating at half of their normal speed while you get to do everything at your normal speed. So you bump fists with somebody and everything they do is in slow motion, whereas you're operating in normal motion. How successful would you be in that environment? I mean, you would be wildly successful. You would be not only a tapping machine because you would see submission opportunities coming, far away, but you would also be a defensive machine because you'd be able to make those adjustments defensively. Someone passes your guard, but they're going slow. You recover, right? No one would ever flatten you out in side control. You would just be amazing. Now let's flip it. What if you're running at half speed and all your opponents are running at normal speed? How much success would you have? Probably zero. You would be totally unsuccessful in that environment. Now, what's the difference there? Well, the difference is the speed at which those windows of opportunity open and close. When you train jiu-jitsu, when you're sparring, there are constantly there are windows of opportunities that open and they close. It happens constantly. And in fact, I don't care how good you are at jiu-jitsu, you don't see all the windows of opportunity that open. You're only seeing a fraction of those things, which are the things that you've trained yourself to recognize through your timing. But make no mistake, there are constantly windows of opportunity that are opening and closing. And what we want is to have the timing to recognize the moment when the window starts opening. Because if the window opens and then it starts closing, and only then do you recognize, I could probably hit a Kimura here. It's too late. The window closed. You need recognition and you need reaction, because that's what timing is, recognition that there's a moment here and the pre-programmed reaction to capitalize on it. Those things have to happen within that window of opportunity. And the better you get at jiu-jitsu, the more you're going to be able to deal with smaller and smaller and smaller windows of opportunity. So it should be obvious based on that skill development happens better when things are taking place slower in jiu-jitsu. We all have an A game, we all have a B game, and we all have a C game. It's like a pyramid. The A game are the techniques that you know absolutely the best. They're the ones that allow you to be most effective, both defensively and offensively. The B games, or the B techniques, are the ones that you know pretty well, and you do hit those things now again, sometimes just against lower level guys, or if, some opportunity presents itself. You know them well, but they're not your A game. And then the base of the pyramid are the C techniques, which constitutes, that whole thing constitutes the totality of what you know. But most things are C-level techniques, which means, they're not as good. They're not what you look for in crunch time. Well, if you train at 100% intensity all the time, the only thing you're going to be able to do is practice your A game and maybe a little bit of your B game. It's going to be very difficult to take things from your C game and let those bubble up to being a B or A technique, simply because at maximum intensity, the windows of opportunity are very, very small. And I got a chance to experience that. One of the benefits of me being nomadic throughout much of my life was that I've had the opportunity to train with kind of a who's who of instructors out there. I've trained with some really, really skilled guys for extended periods of time. But I do remember one environment where I trained for about a year, and I won't mention who they are. It was probably the toughest environment that I ever trained in. There were no easy rounds. Nobody took any rounds off. People came at you 100% all the time. And what happened during that year was, number one, my defense improved, because in an environment like that, you're being smashed a lot and you're going to work on your defense. So that was positive. I also, I think, made a little bit of progress on my A game, maybe my B game a little bit. But the rest of my game completely stagnated. And in fact, after that year, I left feeling less fluent, right? Less knowledgeable in a sense about jiu-jitsu, because all of this other stuff that I had been working on, I let lie fallow during that year because the intensity level was too high. So I believe that the higher the intensity, the slower the technical development. Okay, so let's put that aside for a minute. Now let's talk about the intangibles. What do you have to do to develop the intangibles? Well, if you want to be resilient and tenacious and have a no-quit attitude, well, you have to train yourself to do that by doing those things. You have to have hard sparring rounds. You have to do things that you don't particularly like to do, like getting up in the morning and doing your hill sprints. You have to, do the work to develop the mental aspects of jiu-jitsu. And if you try to do those two things in every single training session, what's going to happen is, you're developing the attributes, the mindset, you're developing all this stuff, but your technical development is going to slow down. And so I think a better strategy is to train most of the time a little more playfully, but then periodically throughout the year, push yourself to a really higher level of fitness and push yourself in jiu-jitsu. That's one of the benefits to doing competitions, is that periodically, when that competition is coming up, you have to take a couple months and do your strength and conditioning, do your road work, really sharpen up your game and push yourself hard in sparring so that you can give yourself a chance to do well in the competition. But if you train that way all the time, number one is it's not as fun, but number two is you're likely to get injured. It's a high intensity jiu-jitsu practice that generally that's where the lingering aches and pains come from, the little stuff that starts to get sore, and there's higher risk when you do that. So I don't think it's a good strategy to train like that all the time, but you should sharpen the knife 2-3 times a year. You should set a goal. Okay, for the next 2 months, I'm just going to be an animal on the mat, and I'm going to go train really hard, and I'm going to get myself in shape, and I'm going to do what I need to do. And then you can back off after the jiu-jitsu competition, or maybe if you're in an environment where they do belt tests, sometimes leading up to those belt tests, you have to train really hard. I'm in the Roy Dean lineage, and I've had to do tests for all my belts. You can go watch my black belt tests on YouTube if you want, on Roy Dean's channel. It's called No Mercy for Old Men. And you can see that it's a competition level intensity event where you're expected to perform technically, and you're expected to perform physically, and you're expected to not quit. You're expected to be resilient. You're expected to have all the intangibles and all the techniques, the technical development in that moment. And so you got to train for that. And for my black belt test, I spent 6-7 months training like a maniac, training as hard as I've ever trained before. And that's what allowed me to get through it. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't push yourself really hard. I just don't think it's a sustainable way to train jiu-jitsu all the time. And it's going to ultimately slow down your technical development. Now, I don't want to get into the weeds on mindset and those things. I'll save that for another day. But if you're curious, a good resource, and I've recommended this book before, I think, on this channel. It's an audio book, and it's not even a book. It's a lecture that a guy named David Cook did called Mindset of a Champion. David Cook, Mindset of a Champion. And it's a great little book. It's a short book. He tells a bunch of stories in there to illustrate, and it's really, I think, a good starting point if you want to really start delving deeper into the mental game of jiu-jitsu and sports in general. And there's lots of, great books, even going all the way back to the classic, The Inner Game of Tennis. And I mean, there's been lots and lots of great books that I've read over the years on that subject of mental training. And so if you're interested in that, go check out that book. But that's basically what I wanted to talk about today, was separating our skill development from our intangible development, because I do think that they are separate components to an overall game, and you're better off when you train those things separately. Let me know what you think. Maybe you disagree entirely, and that's totally okay. Disagree down below. Just remember, we're all friends here. We all love jiu-jitsu. We're all trying to get better, and we're all trying to unlock this beautiful art. And so thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.